Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Plan for the Magic. So glad you are back. We have a fun episode to get to. I'm Audrey. My co-host over there is Dave. We are here to, help you plan or wing your next Walt Disney World vacation. Although with all these things they're adding, it's planning. It's planning more and more. Team planning is winning. Anyway, let's get to it.
This is another Disney podcast production.
Yeah, the whole wing it thing worked really well when we started this podcast. And the world as we know it when it comes to Disney has literally, if you put everything in a box, they dumped it upside down, threw away a bunch of stuff, put one or two things back in that box. And let's just say what they put back in the box is they opened back up the parks. And that's about all that's the same.
Right.
So... Yeah, I don't know how to win winging it anymore.
That's okay. Well, it is what it is. Who knows what will come? So we're just
take
gonna
your
exercise.
Victory lap. Don't be humble. Just take your victory lap and move on.
Well, we will exercise our planning muscles, and then we will be great.
You'll hand it over to me and be like, now to you, Dave, what you got? Crickets. Pick a day and don't plan anything. There you go. Wing it.
All right. Well, I still have a couple things from our most recent trip to go through, so let's do that. But oh my gosh, there's so much that has happened between the last the last time we recorded and now. All the Halloween stuff went down. Mickey's Not Scary is coming back. I'm so excited.
On ADP, we don't ever talk about news anymore, and it's killing me because there's so many crazy things that have happened. Like the mishap this week of the Magic Band Plus that was like can we? Okay, it's too late. I've opened Pandora's box.
Oh, here we go.
I have so many questions about that. Like,
can we tell people what you're talking about before?
Okay, yeah. So the magic bands, which used to be free, now cost no matter who you are or when you go or what you want, whether they're the boring 8 colors that they originally came out with or decorated to your favorite character or event or whatever. But they have these new ones coming out that are way more seems like a stretch, but more interactive.
Yeah, right.
And they're going to be. Well, I was surprised at the price, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And they have announced them many months ago, and that they're coming. And randomly this week, like they showed up on the floor at Disney Springs. Okay.
Yes.
And people bought them.
Yes,
and then they pulled them. It was a mistake. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm going to go full screen on me. Question number 1. If this was a heavy air quotes for those of you listening, mistake, how did it not only end up being on the floor, but like at the retail center to have been at a place to be able to have accidentally been put on the floor? That's question number 1. Question number 2, which really is a follow-up from question number 1. Do you really expect us to believe that wasn't planned because you guys have been getting the best press lately? It's a legitimate question.
Oh.
But that's
a little cynical.
There's no way it makes it from wherever they put the stuff in the warehouse together.
Didn't this happen?
And then it drives there, and then unknowing employee opens these up and is like, oh, more magic bands. Doesn't know that they're like completely different unless they started that day. Come on, Audrey.
Okay, this also happened with the Scarlet Witch Mickey ears in Disneyland. They were not supposed to be released, and then they were accidentally released. And then they pulled them back and said, not yet, not yet. And I know this because I'm obsessed with those things, and I want them.
I can tell. You and 4 other people knew that information.
Oh, my gosh. Wanda, Scarlet Witch, she's my jam. I don't know. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I
did too for years.
Yeah.
Audrey, I forgot to renew my annual pass. Dang it. I forgot. I should have no problem, right? It's not a big deal. It was like February when it expired. I just forgot.
That's not how it is.
Sorry. Yes, I'm being cynical, but like the only question that I have is how does it get there's 16 points that it has to China to warehouse to separation to distribution to truck to Disney Springs to, like now.
We also don't know how soon. So,
correct.
Are they there and they were supposed to be released this Friday and they came out last week?
So now, not playing the devil's advocate, it was probably dropped just barely early.
Yeah.
So that's my. Anyway, okay. I told you before we jumped on that I had late breaking news, early breaking news, new breaking news. I don't know what the actual thing is. The Daniels house had dinner tonight at the dinner table. I have to start with that because that is a rarity all in itself. And it was glorious and magical and all the things you thought it could be. And my daughter has been after me more so recently. She hasn't talked about Disney in quite a while. And has been like, Dad, I want to go to Disney. Dad, I want to go to Disney. And I was like, okay, we'll go this year. That like, yeah, you're pulling my leg to go, right? But
I like where this is headed.
What surprised me was, like we talked about over text this past week, was that Mickey's not so scary. And I was like, okay, then that's where we'll go. We either go late summer or early fall, and that boom, like that was the very first time we took her when she was 3.5 years old. We went that week, and we went because there was the Mickey's not so scary. So she could care less, but to me, that's like that's memorable time.
Totally. Yeah. Absolutely.
However, my wife, who we seldom talk about on this show, is not a Disney parks fan like this weirdo. And she was sitting at the dinner table and said, what if we all just go to Disneyland?
Kim is the best.
So we're looking at flights, which is scary, but we only looked at one place, and it was, believe it or not, it was Breeze Airways, because Breeze at the end of June is launching a nonstop from where we live. We have a very podunk airport, but I love that because there's never a long line of security. It's never really busy. It's a very small airport, but they've added a couple of those lower cost airlines. Well, it's still like $250 to $350 a person each way. That's $2,500 just in flights. Kim and I went to Maui for our 1-year anniversary for $1,800, and we thought that was absurd. But I have a feeling and our kids have never flown further than Disney World. So we kind of want to break it up. So I think I'm going to look at a couple. I really like the route to LAX with American because they go from Norfolk to Dallas and Dallas to LA. And that's almost like halfway. That's like 2.5, 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours. So much easier. The kids get a break. They get off the plane. And now with the raised mask restrictions, I know that I'll probably still wear one. But like, I'm glad that our kids don't have to deal with that if they don't want to. Yeah. So anyway, that was literally a conversation at the dinner. We may sit down and look at numbers and be like, nope. But
oh my gosh, Disneyland. Okay. It's so funny that you say that because 2 weeks ago, I just decided to download the Disneyland app. Like I've never had it on my phone. And I'm like, well, I need to know what's going on in the parks. And like, oh my gosh. Okay,
and you haven't been there since like a little kid, right? Or never been there?
That was the first park I was 3 years old. Yeah. That was the last time I was at Disneyland, which was
I'll never forget. Kim felt we went for the only time that I went with her was we went for the
D23.
Right there, the Disneyland Star Wars half marathon. It was the light side.
Oh, yeah.
And so she had never been, and so we went together, and we went without. We only had one. No, what year was that? 2017. I guess we had both kiddos. I don't know, but like Isaiah was too young.
Genie.
Yeah, I don't even remember now that I'm talking about that. Wow, I'm old. My gosh! Fun fact: that was the last Run Disney event that Disneyland ever did. And I don't think they're coming, but there's no plan for it to come back. Anyway, but we went and like she saw Cars Land and she was like, we have to bring our kids here.
Oh my gosh. I'm so jealous. That's going to be awesome. Okay.
And neither one of our kids like Cars, the movies. I don't know why. I mean, it's amazing. Like I loved it, but it was so funny that she's like, our kids would love this. And I'm like, yeah, you're in the moment. You're like, and then I'm like, They don't like that movie.
Oh.
Anyway.
But
all right.
gosh,
late breaking news over. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. Maybe we will not go back to Walt Disney World during the 50th.
Man,
Who knows?
Right? Oh, wow. That's like a whole game changer.
Gulp. Well, I mean, if they bring an annual pass back, I'll just grab one. But
yeah, that's true. Well, okay. So we're going to have to, I will say, ironically, we will transition now to talk about Genie Plus. And I have been watching on the Disneyland app, and I think it's really true. Like, all of the I've got 5 lessons that I learned with our family when we were there, and this is exclusive to Walt Disney World because I do think Genie Plus works great in Disneyland. Okay. It also is way less, I'm going to use the word competitive. I don't know that that's the right word, but there tend to be a lot more there's just a lot more availability in Disneyland. So anyway.
Well, I mean, this is not the time for it, but it'll be interesting to unpack like why we think that is.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I have a couple of thoughts, but it is interesting because that. Yeah, and I think that's what Disney wanted in their AP pass structure and their pricing structure change. I feel like what they were aiming for in Walt Disney World seems to be working better in Anaheim.
Disneyland. I think that's exactly right, actually. All right. Well, let's dig in. So a few episodes ago, I did sort of the basics around Genie Plus. So you guys I can't remember what episode number that was.
It was.
So this is going to be kind of an addendum. I'm not going to go back and go through all of the details about Genie Plus. There are 2 different tiers that I will talk about. Okay. Genie Plus is $15 per person per day, and it gives you access to a good chunk of rides, most of the parks. There's not a huge list in Animal Kingdom, and you can make reservations one at a time. And then in each park, there are also individual lightning lanes that you pay an additional fee to get to ride that ride. And by the use of an individual lightning lane or Genie Plus, then you get to use the lightning lane and make the line short, like Fast Pass system. And I would say that all of the tips that I had before, I think, are very true. They worked in real time. But these are just some things I didn't quite realize until, and of course, when Andrew and I went by ourselves, we didn't even go to Animal Kingdom, and we only used Genie Plus, I think, at 2 parks. We used it at Magic Kingdom, and we used it at Hollywood Studios. So lesson number 1 that I learned by using Genie Plus at all 4 parks with our family of 4 is that each park is very, very different when it comes to Genie Plus. So understanding and using Genie Plus in Magic Kingdom does not necessarily mean you're going to be as successful at using Genie Plus in other parks. So just a quick way they're different from each other. I would say the Magic Kingdom is going to be the place where you will be able to use the highest number of Genie Plus reservations over the course of your park day. Yeah. There's just a large number of them, other than a handful, not even a handful, other than really Pirates and Jungle Cruise. The rest of them aren't selling out is the word I'm going to use, but they're not running out of reservations. Compared to Animal Kingdom, where there's a very short list of Genie Plus options, and those fill up pretty quick because that's it. Once your first reservation is used, or it's 2 hours after park opening, which is when you're allowed to make your second reservation, everyone is competing for the same 3 or 4 or
I mean, it's the classic case, right, of supply and demand, right?
Exactly.
The demand isn't any less at Animal Kingdom than it is at Magic Kingdom, but at Magic Kingdom there's 847 attractions, and at Animal Kingdom there's 6. Herein lies the problem.
Yes.
And so I would say, since we are planned for the Magic, I don't know where we're going in this episode. We haven't talked that much about it in depth, but if it's not this episode, I would love to really help people plan a strategy or maybe we should just do, if you're going to all 4 parks, is it I don't know that you don't go to Disney World to save money, but I'm just let me try to put these words together that aren't coming out well. If you're trying to go to do Disney on a budget, we'll call it that. I would say maybe rough it the Animal Kingdom day and not buy it versus get it at maybe the other 3 or the other 2 parks. Epcot to me is still up in the air. We'll wait till you get there.
A little.
But I mean, I think it's worth talking about. Okay, here's what you experience. Here's what you do. I want to personally for me, I have yet to experience this new system because I know I say this every episode, but last time I went was October 1. It didn't exist. I haven't been back since then. And so I don't know. I'm learning from Audrey as we're going through all this stuff because I don't know. And to me, what I've heard so far, I would be hard pressed to say, yeah, I know I'm only here for 4 days and it would probably make sense, but I don't think I'm going to get Animal Kingdom. I'll just get up super early or wait in the long line to get the attraction that I want to get. So I wonder if we should unpack that in the future or.
Yeah, I would love to do that by park. And I didn't quite realize how different they were. I was like, oh, we have these, you make your first reservation at 7 and then 2 hours after park opening, you get your next one. And, Walt Disney World has on their Genie Plus, the page that explains what Genie Plus is that on average, users are only able, especially during that sort of spring break busy season, to get 2 or 3 Genie Plus reservations for the whole day.
Yeah.
That did not prove to be true for us at all at Magic Kingdom or at Hollywood Studios. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But I do think the limited number of options at Animal Kingdom is there aren't any more rides to reserve.
Yeah, it's hard.
There are, ways that you can keep refreshing, and sometimes people change their plans. And there are options to use them for, reserved seating at Kite Tails or, actually, I don't even think that's true. I think you can use a Genie Plus for the Festival of the Lion King, but I don't think they have reserved seating right now for Kite Tails, the show. So there are shows that are options at Animal Kingdom. Epcot is such a great, for us, we were trying, I'm trying to think of how.
I know it's hard to.
Plow
through this.
We were able to do Test Track and Frozen as Genie Plus reservations, and then we ended up just doing standby for Soarin'. But then because we had done standby, you can only use Genie Plus on one ride once. We were able later in the afternoon to refresh, and then we got a Soarin' one and we're able to go and use a Genie Plus reservation for Soarin'. But other than that, you could use it for things and again, in this sense, it does sort of mirror a little bit Magic Kingdom. You could use it for Figment. You could use it for, Crush. Some of these, Spaceship Earth, Living with the Land. I think we used it for Living with the Land just for fun because we were right there and we were like, let's just book it so we can use our Magic Band. So again, if you are just wanting to use it, but most of those you don't need to use Genie Plus because the wait is short. Hollywood Studios, I think, is a challenge, mostly because there are just so many amazing attractions, and you just have to decide, of these 5 or 6 really important, whereas Magic Kingdom, it's really just 2 that are going to get snatched up first, Peter Pan and Jungle Cruise. At Hollywood, it is Slinky, and it is, there's just so many of them. And so we ended up, not doing ones that we wanted to, because we opted, and, to your point about which parks should we use Genie Plus for, I think part of this is, what is your kind of limit on wait, and what attractions are non-negotiable? So if you don't get a Genie Plus for this, are you willing to wait for, an hour and a half for Smuggler's Run? Anyway, I think that's just a general, we will revisit this, but I do think that assuming you can know how to use Genie Plus at one park does not necessarily translate to how the strategy is or how it's used across all 4.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is really low-hanging fruit, but the easy answer is Genie Plus was built for Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It really is. And why I say that is, I mean, I even, a lot of people say, but Hollywood Studios, and to be able to still have that fast pass-ish option. But here's my problem with that. Okay, so every family's different. Doesn't matter if you're 1 to 99, right? Hollywood Studios is the most challenging, and why I think that is because, at least for right now, it has the most what's the word I'm looking for? I almost said death-defying. That doesn't make any sense.
Really?
But yeah, the most thrill attractions. Yeah. And so here's the challenge. So for my kiddos, when you think about that park, Rock and Roller Coaster is out.
Yep.
Tower of Terror is out, right? Yep. So those are 2 pretty major attractions right there, right off the list. And so you're paying for something, and then maybe for you and your family, or for someone, it's very likely that someone in every family is good, or at least one in every family is going to no. And so that's where it's so tough. And I think it would be vital to for us to do and probably just cover one park per episode where we break down all of that, because that's where I would that would be another one where I would yes, it would be great for, let me ask you, because I'm still so unfamiliar with it. What are the lightning lanes at Hollywood Studios?
Well, I just want to pause, because you literally said out of your mouth what lesson number 2 is, which is Hollywood Studios is by far the most difficult to navigate. So even if you are, you understand that these guys are the parks are different. Mm-hmm. I'm pulling up the list. So
I know it's got to be Mickey's.
So Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway,
and then Star Wars,
and Toy Story Mania, right? So Tower of Terror, Star Tours, Slinky Dog, Rock and Roller Coaster, Smuggler's Run.
These are all Genie Plus?
Those are all Genie Plus.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What is the lightning lane there?
Just Rise of the Resistance right now. It was
Mickey's. Not Mickey and Minnie's.
No, they bumped it. They demoted it.
Okay.
Which your first.
Well, that's a good thing.
Sort of.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you would think, because it's included in the list then, but then you have to, again, that gets in the mix of, if you're only going to be able to do 2 or 3, what are your 2 or 3? For us, it had to be Toy Story Mania and Slinky Dog. And then that third one, we chose Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. We hadn't done it. And so then
such a phenomenal
Smuggler's
attraction.
Run is out. So yeah, I mean, I think the competition is so fierce for those 5 or 6 that by the time you've made your first one at 7, you make your second one 2 hours after opening, you make your third one 2 hours after that, all of those top 4 or 5 are already full for the day.
Okay. Question from the audience.
Yeah.
Having experienced this, because you've now gone multiple trips where this was in effect. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my question that I feel like it's probably a double-edged sword, but meaning that might be the answer, but I'll ask you.
Yeah.
Is the crux of Genie Plus, or the crutch, or whatever, the fault of it, the fact that you pick one and you have to wait 2 hours? Is that its Achilles heel? Because now, why I say that, because the advantage of the Fast Pass, like after you burned your 3 and then you scanned it, you were right back on the app in line going to grab the next one, right?
So
and that's what made Fast Pass so valuable.
You can use it that way, but you can only use it that way if you find one that is immediately open to use.
Oh gosh.
Right? So you don't choose your time. They're booked in chronological order. So the first ones that are available are the earliest in the day. So you can do something that, at 7 a.m., if you book something that's like 9:05 or whatever, which is unlikely going to be any of the headliners, because everyone is going for all of them. So your first Genie Plus reservation is 3 p.m. or later.
Wow.
And don't get me started on the fact that you pick a time and it changes like twice by the time you confirm. It's maddening. You really don't even know until you've like picked all the people in your party and then you hit confirm. Wow. It could be 2 hours later. So, thinking of Epcot, this is a little bit easier to think about. If you wanted to do at 7 a.m., if you wanted to book a Spaceship Earth for 9:05, you went in at 9:05 and tagged your Magic Band, you could then at 9:05 pick your second one because you've just used that first one. But again, everybody who is picking the 7 a.m. one is picking Frozen or Test Track. And so by the time 9:05 rolls around for you to pick your second one, those aren't available. So it's definitely, I said this before, like picking up the app before your trip and watching what happens between 7 o'clock, and you know what the hours are. So set an alarm. This is literally what I did before our trip. I was like, okay, I'm going to just watch what happens at Hollywood Studios over the course of a couple days. And I'm going to see what happens 2 hours after park opening and just see what is left. And it'll show you exactly what the next Genie Plus time reservation is. Wow. So in theory, you could use it exactly that way, but in practice, it's much more challenging.
Okay. Follow-up question, switching parks, Magic Kingdom. It's obviously more valuable at Magic Kingdom just based on the sheer amount of attractions that you can do.
Yeah.
Are those times considerably earlier?
Yeah. So you were like feeding me this thing. My lesson number 3 is this. They called it, the people, like the actual Disney experts call it stacking. Oh. And stacking is a very smart strategy. So, and we ended up doing this at Magic Kingdom because we didn't even leave our resort until 5 p.m. But every 2 hours, I had my alarm on. And so I could see, I can't remember. Well, I can tell you exactly when our first, I just want to wrap up this Hollywood Studios thing.
Go,
I will say, I think it's probably worth it for us to revisit each one of the parks and do a whole thing on that one. I think the lesson there is, you're going to have to pick your first 2 like top tier. So you have to, and this is, sometimes it's like choosing between your children, right? How do you pick between Smuggler's Run and Tower of Terror and Slinky Dog? But I think it's going to be the smartest thing to do is to identify 1 or 2 rides that you're willing to wait for, and then 1 or 2 rides that you just really want to use that, the Genie Plus for, and do those 2, and then just take a breath and see what else is available after you've gotten those 2. And you're just not going to be able to plan this 4 or 5 attractions out. So you just kind of do the best you can. And anyway, but this stacking thing. So lesson number 3 for us, and this actually happened well for us at Hollywood Studios too. And it is just to not fight the system. So if your reservations are coming for 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., just let it happen. And then when you're allowed to make your next reservation, look and see. And if there's something close by that's within an hour, book it for that time. And then what we ended up doing, it worked beautifully, both at Hollywood Studios and at Magic Kingdom. It just worked more at Magic Kingdom. We were able to keep more.
Right.
Is that so all day long we were not in the park, and I just kept adding another Genie Plus reservation. And so by the time we walked into the park at 5:30, we had reservations for rides. I think probably 5 rides between 5:30 and 7 that were all overlapping. And it actually ended up working really, really well. You do have to know the layout of the park. If you're going to, because Genie Plus does they will allow you to book 2 rides at exactly the same 1 hour window, which seemed a little weird to me. So if you're going to do that, which again, we pulled it off, but I knew, okay, we're going to do Peter Pan. I think I talked about this in the last episode where we did like Peter Pan, 7 Dwarves, Haunted Mansion, Splash Mountain, Pirates, right? So we were all on sort of that left-hand western side of the park. So it wouldn't be ideal if you didn't know the park. You don't want to be like running from Peter Pan over to Space Mountain and back.
We've
over
all done
to
that,
Mountain.
Lord.
And, yeah. So I guess all this is to say, if the system is going to work where you're going to be forced to make reservations late in the afternoon, for us, the lesson was don't fight it and just work with that system and book a bunch of those Genie Pluses, in the afternoon and in the evening. It's
kind of a take what it gives you versus fight.
Yeah. Which, is not how we tour. Like, we were the get up early, be done by 3 p.m. and then go have the evening. So for us, we had to almost invert the way we have approached touring Disney, which ended up being fine. Our kids are a little older. We were fine, but
it does make for longer days at the park. And how do you break up right? Because for a lot of people, their first Genie Plus might be smack dab in the middle of their like afternoon siesta when they would typically be back at the hotel in the pool.
It's very true. Yes.
Yeah.
So for us, instead of doing that, we just said we just won't go at all. Right. Instead of going in the morning and coming back, we'll just wait and go in the afternoon. Yeah. So it's tricky.
Yes.
Okay. Lesson number 4 is to keep trying.
Okay.
The Hollywood Studios day for me, and I think I texted you this or we talked about this before, of like, I had done my homework. I knew what was going to happen. I knew Slinky Dog was going to go first, and that immediately right after that, I could make my, the Rise of the Resistance. I'd have to pay for the individual lightning lane. But if you don't do Slinky first, Slinky's going to be gone. So you have to do Slinky first. So I knew that. I knew that. I had read the articles. I had done the thing. And you know what I didn't think about? I didn't think about between the 4 people in my family, does anybody really want to do Slinky more than they wanted to do Rise of the Resistance? The answer was 0 people. Rise was by far the priority for that day, but I got so caught up in the strategy of it that 7 rolls around, I hit refresh, get the thing, tag the people, and something, when you open that app, it always opens at Magic Kingdom instead of that was another thing that we've already talked about, how you have to pick the park every single time. By the time I finished all of that and went to buy my individual lightning lane for Rise, they were gone. And I was devastated.
Yeah, traumatized is a fair word. I'll leave it up to you if you want to tell the people what you did. But
it was literally my 14th wedding anniversary day. And that is the only ride Andrew wanted to ride the whole there. And I blew it. So I'm sitting in the bathroom crying. Everybody else is asleep. And I just refreshed and refreshed and refreshed and refreshed. Turns out the super genius people over at Blog Mickey, because I read this article like 4 days after we got back from our trip, discovered that at the 17-minute mark, Disney reloads individual lightning lanes. So I literally must have just been sitting there
pounding the app,
refreshing it for 17 minutes, and then it popped up. Do you want to know the irony of it? After the whole thing we just talked about with stacking those late afternoon.
It was earlier in the day.
It was at 10:05. So I was like, get up, everybody get up. We have to go. Yeah, I don't know if at first I thought maybe it was even earlier than that, like 9:40, because it was one of those, we were there right when they started extending the morning and the evening park hours. Mm-hmm. So one thought I had was, well, they've loaded all the usual park hour ones, and then they had to go back and like add the early, because the park had just started opening an hour early.
Right.
But yeah, I guess this has been a thing, that at the 17-minute mark, they've added more. So we were able to get it. And I'm so glad I did not give up. Although I will say 3 times, because the app is so, you have to pick the park, and then you pick the time, and then you pick your party. And then like 3 times I had gotten it and it was gone by the time I picked my party and hit enter. But it did finally go through. So it is not in real time. It's pretty stressful.
Oh, of course.
Not for the faint of heart.
Not recommended. Not recommended for 14th anniversaries.
No, right? I mean, but I really that was a huge lesson of like, you can learn all the strategies, but please don't forget what your family cares about, and like what you all want your trip to be. In that moment, I thought, that
okay.
was.
I have a confession to make.
Okay.
You have shown through your 2 different trips of working through this system, learning it, working it.
Yeah.
That how planning is key.
Yeah.
And when I say that is, and I'm not talking about what you want to do when you want to do it, because a lot of that is out of your hands,
right?
Especially with the times. But you touch on a key thing that I know I don't think about in the moment. I'm pounding the app and I'm working the system and I'm getting the things.
Right.
But like, I hardly ever say, hey guys, what do you want to do? Right. And so like, it's like, I know as we're moms or dads or whoever is your trip planner, that is a valuable piece of information. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people. I know a lot of people could just say like, my families just go with the flow. Great. As long as that's part of the planning. If you know your team, that works out great. But like you touched on that key point of part of that planning, if you're doing all the muscle work, you have to have key pieces of information from the rest of your team to be able to know how to deploy what you guys do. I think that's valuable. And I don't know that was really the same with FastPass, because it was kind of like you picked 3 and you knew like everybody, we're going to Disney. Everybody loves these 3 rides. That's and then from there you can wing it, but look at the app together and say, okay, like that's so much easier. This is a whole different ball game, and you're paying for it. So you want to be even more like strategic of how you're doing it to the best of your ability. So I think that was a good kind of piece to kind of stop and say, don't forget about your team, because it's different now.
It is different. And I remember in the first Genie Plus episode, one of my tips was like, pick a Genie Plus pilot, right?
Yes.
So someone who's going to be doing this so that you don't have to pause between every reservation and say, what do you guys want to do? What do you guys want to do? Like, that sounds like a nightmare. But I definitely think it is like to remember and it's not even just like the list of all the rides that everybody wants, which was kind of what I meant when I said that, like just get everybody's list of rides. It's more about priorities and more about like, what are the just handful of things that your crew, what matters most to them?
Right.
And I think I didn't really understand that those were different from each other. Just having a list. Oh yeah, this is the list of all the rides I'd ride. That's great. But like, what are the 2 or 3 that like just really matter? And then I, as the pilot, needed to be reminded of that more than I was, or I needed to be more mindful of it.
That's the key. You just said it. What are the 2 or 3 that are important? You didn't have to think of that with FastPass because you kind of grabbed your 2 or 3.
Knew it.
And if you didn't get them, well, then you knew as what the next one you were looking for. Like that's where I think it's so valuable to feel like that's the difference. That's the difference now, is because they're, other than Magic Kingdom, for the most part, I know this is a blanket statement, it's much more challenging to get what you're looking for, especially at a reasonable time during your day that you're going to the park.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, I think it felt different, like not knowing what you were going to get the morning of your park visit. Like there's something different about 60 days out or 30 days out. Like, okay, this is what we got. This is what we didn't get. We can rope drop that ride. But like when you don't know that until 7 a.m. or 11 a.m. while you're in the park, it really, I mean, we were teasing at the top of this show about how winging it is no longer a thing, but in some cases, like you have to have some flexibility because you just don't know what's going to happen. And as a planner, I didn't realize kind of the stress of that, how that felt different, that it was happening on the park day in real time versus like, okay, well, we didn't get it. We didn't get, Seven Dwarfs. No big deal. We can whatever.
Right.
But it was like, I'm going to have to wake up my children and tell them we didn't get Rise of the Resistance. And this is our only day at like it just became this like frenzied feeling that was just unexpected.
See, these are key things to talk about because just a few years ago, I mean, it's not like this was many, many moons ago, just a couple of years ago, if you didn't get Rise of the Resistance, no big deal. Let's go back to Hollywood Studios tomorrow and try again. That is not a thing anymore with the reservation system. Yep. Like it's so different now, and it's such a challenge. And back to, I don't want to get too far away from, because I had another thought. Back to the planning it versus winging it. And I have another question. This is more of like what do you think?
Yeah.
What is the real strategy on Disney's part? And what is the value of not allowing you to do that until 7 a.m.? Because I get that you don't want to give everything, but to me, I'm like 30 days out, I'm paying for this. I should at least, and this sounds really petty to say, since I used to get 3 of them for free, but I should at least be able to pick one.
Yeah.
I don't understand, why do they want you to come here and enjoy all of these magical memories when you have to wake up at dark 30 on your vacation, to make this, to start this process? Why? What is the value of 7 a.m. for them?
It's such a good question. And it really was more disruptive than I thought. My alarm went off at 6:45. I'm trying not to wake everybody else. We were in a deluxe studio in the Polynesian Villas. And so, and I am a morning person, but gosh, I probably wouldn't have set my alarm for 6:45 every morning.
Right.
I wasn't there. You may have been there during the virtual queue system, which is, I think, the first system where it was the day of. And in my mind, a virtual queue, that sounds like something that happens in real time.
Yeah.
A reservation like Genie Plus, I just don't think it has to. I think
that's what I'm saying. What are they
that's a
gaining?
really good point.
And they're also like I imagine it's not happened, but I would think like from a technological standpoint, it's system overload when 70,000 people are all doing the same thing, going to the same place at the same time. Like, I just don't understand the value of that.
So at this point, at 7 a.m., both on and off property guests can book their first Genie Plus reservation. Right. Do you think Genie Plus would just be sold out if they only allowed, because that's what happens with rides like Rise of the Resistance. Only on property guests are allowed to purchase that at 7. In order to purchase individual lightning lanes for off property guests, you have to be in the park.
Yeah. I'm okay with
and
lightning
they're all
lanes.
gone.
I don't have a problem with that. But
yeah,
the Genie
but
Plus
that's
thing,
what I'm wondering. Like, do you think off property guests would just not buy it if they couldn't? Like, if Slinky Dog was already sold out of Genie Plus reservation times 30 days in advance, what would be their incentive to buy it?
Yeah, that's probably the why behind it. That I get. It doesn't make it good.
Right.
But
no, I mean, it's not. It actually, in this case, totally advantages. It doesn't.
It's advantage Disney.
Right. Yeah. There's not a real differentiation if you're an on-property or an off-property guest.
Yeah.
And that, again, that was the strategy for me of doing Slinky Dog before Rise, because everybody who was going, you're like leading me through this conversation.
But let me push back on what you said though. But you could get 3 Fast Pass, and they were never like sold out.
Right. Do you think it's because you could get?
I don't know. We're trying to figure it out.
I know.
But yeah, like it's just.
I don't have enough data.
It's enough for me to say like, it doesn't make sense. Like to me, it's kind of like, why is the reservation system still here? Because the parks are basically wide open. Well, it's because it benefits Disney. Yeah. Why is this happening at 7 a.m.? Because it benefits Disney.
If they let you book that first individual lightning lane ahead of time, and you still had to do the rest like 2 hours, I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love that, to not have to like, and just to have like a base of like,
you knew what your first thing of the day was.
At this time, at this day, like now kind of work around it.
Right.
You used to do that with dining reservations, but I don't know how. We didn't have very many. We had 3, including Oga's. We had 2 at Hollywood Studios. We ate at the 50s Primetime Cafe at Oga's. And Chef Mickey's. Y'all know we ate at Chef Mickey's. But if we had like character meals every day, which we've done in the past before, that would have stressed me out trying to navigate that with these Genie Plus.
Because the time you get is the time you get.
So lesson number 5, you mentioned this just a minute ago, is that park hopping is possible, but it takes some planning. There are some people who have pitched the idea, if there are only a couple of rides at Animal Kingdom and only a couple of rides at Epcot, you could buy Genie Plus for that one day and park hop between the 2.
Yeah.
It's possible, but what ends up happening is you're increasing the number of big ticket rides and you're compressing more rides into one Genie Plus day, which actually I think works to your disadvantage. That's why Hollywood Studios is probably the hardest to navigate. So I think we did not try to park hop with Genie Plus using Genie Plus reservations second park. From the experience that we did, if you wanted to do that, I would suggest doing Hollywood Studios or Epcot and get those first 2 as early as you possibly could, and then park hopping over to Magic Kingdom. But it's hard to do if your first, your first Genie Plus reservation isn't until 4:00 at your original park.
And I gotta say, like, I don't know. Not that anybody has asked or is asking, but if you're not an annual pass holder, I would, and you're going for more than 2 or 3 days, do not buy a park hopper. It is not like, I don't understand. Like, it's so funny. There was like breaking news last week that the park hopper option disappeared off the website, and people were like, is it gone? Can you now park hop like before 2 p.m. whenever you want to go? And no, it was just I'm not going to call it a glitch, but like, it was. And so to me, I'm still, if you have an annual pass, you lose nothing, right? You have that ability, but man, if we were going this summer, I would absolutely not buy it, especially if we were, because very few people go to Disney World for a day or two. Yes, there are definitely some that do, but if you're trying to maximize on a short amount of time, sure, because if you're going to Hollywood Studios, it's going to close at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and Epcot may be open till 11 or 12. Absolutely, go there and have dinner, have drinks, go catch a few late rides, watch Harmonious. Absolutely, but if you're like a family, the value is just not there. It's just not there.
Yeah, I definitely feel like these are some growing pains with this system. I feel like I've stressed everybody out with this episode, but I think one of the things I tried to do was leverage Genie Plus as much as possible at each park. If you go in saying it is worth $15 for me to ride 2 headliners and maybe 1 or 2 of sort of the B level at each park, then it will be less stressful. You'll absolutely be able to do that, and then pick the ones that you want to wait for. I think those of us who are I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to wrangle and wrestle the whole park into submission using Genie Plus, I think that has been harder to do.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think if we lower our expectations, say, can I use Genie Plus for 2 or 3? If that's not financially worth it for you, I think that's the rub, is if you want to invest that money for 6 rides, it's going to be a challenge. But if it's worth it for you to get a couple of big headliners in without the wait, so you can do other things in the park, go for it. And I think you'll be able to do that without higher levels of anxiety and stress. So.
Yeah.
All right.
This wasn't a very fun episode, was it?
I know. I feel like that.
I'm exhausted.
I am too. I know. But I think they're important.
Yeah.
Just, lessons. Every park is different. Hollywood Studios is the toughest. So do a little prep work. Stacking in the evening is a great strategy. Mm-hmm. Stack those reservations. Keep trying. Don't give up. And park hopping is possible, but I wouldn't use it as a Genie Plus strategy.
Yeah. So. I don't think it'll be a winning percentage.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Next week, it's going to be happy things.
Okay.
Easy things.
We're willing it. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.